Our top focus at this hour, tensions continue to simmer between Russia and the West. This amid possibilities of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. And now in the latest coming in, Russia has unveiled the security guarantees that it demands from the West. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that it has now sought assurances from the West to give up any military activity in Ukraine and Eastern Europe and not to expand the NATO military alliance further, adding that the response from the West till now has not been promising. The developments come after the European Union leaders gathered in Brussels on Thursday and insisted that there was an urgent need for Russia to de-escalate tensions caused by the military build-up along its border with Ukraine. Both the EU and NATO's North Atlantic Council reiterated their previous threat of imposing sanctions on Moscow.
Our position is very clear. We maintain our concern related to Russia's military build-up on the eastern Ukrainian borders are well known. Our position is very clear. We maintain our call on Russia to de-escalate tensions and refrain from any further aggression. We would like to be in a situation where relations with Russia are good, but this is very much depending on the choices made by Moscow. So let there be no doubt, if Russia were to move against Ukraine, the Union will be in a position to take sanctions that could extract a massive cost. We have done our work in that respect.
Although no sanctions were debated at this summit, diplomats have said that new measures could include the targeting of Russian oligarchs, banning EU transactions with private Russian banks, as well as the possibility of cutting all Russian banks from the SWIFT network that is a bedrock of international money transfers. For now, the EU leaders have agreed to renew for 6 months the existing economic sanctions imposed on Russia in the year 2014. The ongoing sanctions are in response to Moscow's annexation of Crimea. At present, there are reports of a Russian buildup of troops on the border with Ukraine. There are currently nearly 175,000 Russian troops deployed near the border. Speaking on which, the NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said that there was no sign that the Russian military buildup was slowing down.
Ukraine is a highly valued partner of our alliance, and I thank you for your personal commitment to our partnership. We discussed Russia's substantial military build-up in and around Ukraine, with tens of thousands of combat-ready troops, tanks, artillery, armored units, drones, electronic warfare systems. We see no sign that this build-up is stopping or slowing down. On the contrary, it continues. This build-up has no justification. It is provocative, it is destabilizing, and it undermines security in Europe.
Ukraine's president, meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky, who attended the Leaders' Summit in Brussels, made it clear that he wanted stricter sanctions against Russia, though he also conceded for the first time that he was ready for talks with Moscow, be it in any format whatsoever. For more on recent developments, we are now being joined by Stuart Smith from Moscow for more details. Stuart, thanks so much for joining us on WION at this hour. Now, we, of course, have been tracking the tensions over Ukraine for weeks now, especially between Russia and the West over this conflict. Russia has now said that it is unveiling security guarantees that it wants, or rather demands, from the West. This includes promises to give up any military activity in Ukraine. What more can you tell us about this development?
Well, the list which is being handed over by Russia to the United States, Russia says is exactly what the US President Joe Biden spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin about last week. So they say there are no surprises in that list, but for the first time, we are actually seeing what Russia is demanding of the United States and NATO for what Russia says security guarantees. And it is a list with a lot of requirements on there, a lot of demands, many of which analysts here in Russia say the United States can't possibly agree to. For one, many of these things are things which are not even for the United States to decide. So, for example, one of the things Russia would like is it's demanding that NATO does not deploy weapons in eastern Ukrainian countries, does not allow Eastern European countries, does not allow Ukraine to join. Well, those kind of things are not a decision for the United States. They're a decision for NATO, and NATO's already ruled it out. So that's one big problem with this list of demands. The second big problem is there are things in here which which would contradict the United States security policy for the last 30 years since the Cold War ended. For example, removing nuclear weapons from outside its country, so from removing weapons that the United States owns from other European countries, making guarantees about not going too close to Russian warships or Russian air defences. Now, there are things there which potentially the US would be happy to accept, like more dialogue about military activities, some guarantees about where troops are moving. But certainly a lot of this document seems like something which Russia might not actually expect the United States to be able to agree on.
Right. Now, Stuart, another important question that arises is that both the EU and NATO's North Atlantic Council have reiterated their previous threat of imposing sanctions on Moscow. And all this is happening while Ukraine's president saying that he's actually, in fact, willing to have a conversation with Moscow on the same. So how will all these developments pan out in the future?
Well, that's right. So we have a lot of calls for diplomacy here with the current situation. So Ukraine's happy to talk to Russia. The European Union is happy to work with Russia on trying to create a less sensitive conflict situation. But the European Union, at the same time, is now bringing its threats of sanctions in line with what the United States and the United Kingdom have already said with regard to severe repercussions, economic repercussions, should Russia decide to invade Ukraine. Now, note that all of this hinges on Russia actively going in to Ukraine. What is going on now is Russia's building forces up along its border with Ukraine, but that is not anything anyone is threatening Russia about. They're worried about it, but no sanctions are being imposed just for the build-up of troops. What these countries are saying, and the European Union is saying, is if Russia then makes a movement into Ukraine, that would be the trigger. But Ukraine says it wants sanctions applied now, before anything has happened. And that is something that the European Union or the United States have not expressed any interest in doing. What Russia would like to see is another meeting between US President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin. But if there need to be any kind of agreement on these demands before such a meeting happens, that seems really unlikely. And the big fear is Russia now has a reason to say that the United States is not playing ball when it comes to diplomacy. And what will Russia do then if it can say the United States has batted away its attempts at coming to some sort of agreement?
Absolutely. Stuart Smith, thank you so much for all those inputs and insights, and thanks for joining us from Moscow at this hour. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.